computer. Hello. Hi, Attorney Chris Thogmartin. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Attorney Sarah Porras. How are
You're
you?
doing okay. It's July 23rd, and do you mind introducing yourself and why I asked you to interview today?
My name's Attorney Chris Thogmartin. I am primarily a bankruptcy attorney, do some estate planning, but like many attorneys, I am also a member of the foreclosure committee list for the Judicial District of New Britain. And that is where we are appointed by the court to represent the court, conduct a foreclosure auction, make sure that signs are posted, ads are placed, put a posting on the judicial branch website, um, pay the appraiser, all that good stuff. But most importantly, conduct the auction on site. And I imagine the reason you're interested in me is because my last one ended up, we didn't know it at the time, but there ended up being some interesting facts associated with that one.
That's right. And the reason I'm doing the interviewing is because I'm a foreclosure defense attorney in Connecticut as well. And I actually hadn't heard of this until after it hit the news. Another client of mine sent me an email about something else, and she referenced this, terrible thing. And in another context altogether, she said something like, well, if somebody could, buy a house with dead bodies in it and still pay good money, maybe my house could go for good money at all, and I was like, what? And so I checked it out and noticed that you were the committee. And I remember emailing you immediately and saying, how are you doing? And at the time you were being swamped with media calls, right?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a circus initially.
How,
Um,
and what were the questions they were asking?
well, a lot of them were questions about the process and what did I know and did I find the bodies? And the answer is no, I did not. The first I learned of it was when the attorney for the John Lewis, the attorney for the successful bidder, gave me a call. Said, "Hey, man, are you sitting down?" And
Yeah.
we had a pretty intense conversation about how his client had, I guess, gotten a little impatient as far as being able to see the property. And the property was, in his defense, it was pretty clearly not being maintained and appeared to be unoccupied and abandoned. And so he and I believe maybe an electrician or
Mm.
a normal flip it crew went in and they discovered that there were some bodies in the house. Um,
So you
so
don't think it was the actual bidder who went in? You think he might have sent someone over, or you think he
no,
was
I
waiting?
think it was the bidder who went in. I mean, I didn't talk to him personally, but my understanding is that the bidder went in with a couple people with him because he
Okay.
was a flipper, and so he probably brought an electrician to examine the property and see what needed to be done. They wanted to get a head start on getting this thing renovated and back onto market, and they discovered three heavily deteriorated bodies. And so that was a bit of an issue. So, aside from, call the cops immediately,
Right.
they were advised to leave the premises. I don't believe that, there was any issue with the law enforcement. I don't think that they're under any sort of indictment or I don't think anyone's getting mad at them.
No, the
Uh,
the buyer. No, no, I don't think
no.
so either. Right.
But, this immediately raised a lot of issues, and of course it hit the press and I got bombarded with comments. I actually ended up just having like a standard email that I wrote and copied and pasted a lot. It's like, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, call the
Yeah.
cops, call the highway patrol, blah blah blah, blah.
Okay.
So yeah, that
I
that
mean, so
that went on for a while.
the headlines, I'm going to share this. The headlines are, well, this is the docket. I'm going to start with the docket here. Tell me if you see the docket there, right? There you go.
I do, yes.
Okay. And then this is the headline. Do you see this headline or is it still on the docket?
No, I see it. He got
Okay.
a housing
So,
bargain and
yeah.
then he found the dead bodies.
Right. I mean, and on the 20th, they did a similar headline. This is the Wall Street Journal. And then I just saw this one, and I don't subscribe, so I wasn't actually able to read the whole article. But I think that the focus is on how could I just don't think people understand how the foreclosure auction process works. And I mean, never mind the bodies, but they're just like, how can you sell a house without going in it, right? How can a house get sold at auction without the people buying or anybody being able to access it? And in my experience, I've had people call me because I defend people in foreclosures. They'll call, like, here's an interesting one. This woman called me a long time ago and she said, my father's house went to auction. It only went for this much. And I looked at the fair market value online. I was like, that's kind of low. And she said, that's okay because he was so sick and he was alone that the house is basically a hazmat situation. And so I was told to like shut the curtains, shut the windows, shut the doors, don't let anyone in and see if they bid well because the outside looked okay. So she ended up, sort of falling sort of in the middle there. I think what happens is when people can't see it, they the bids are lower, right? They don't know if the copper plumbing is in the property. They don't know what kind of condition the house is in. And so they're not going to bid top dollar if they haven't seen the interior. And um, but then again, it's demand. There's not a lot of properties. Burlington, it's a big property. Burlington's a nice town. So somebody
Well,
bid.
did you look at the if you look at the Realtor.com picture, I mean, this is clearly before this was taken when the property was actually being taken care of. I mean, it looks great. I was like,
Okay.
wow,
Why
what
don't
a
I
nice
yeah,
property.
why don't I find
Um,
that while we're talking? Yeah.
but it's a little it's a little overgrown now. You know, when we got there were vines that were so thick that were growing on the front porch that you couldn't get to the front door unless you army crawled under those things, which
Wow.
I did not.
That's crazy.
I got like
Um,
10 ticks on me just standing in the driveway, so I was not gonna do that. But there were neighbors around there with their kids, and they were traipsing all around I mean, in retrospect, it's really ghastly, but you know, they were traipsing all around the property and going into the bushes and what have you. And I was thinking, wow, that
yeah.
wouldn't
So
let my kids back there.
here's the realtor. So that somebody had mowed the lawn and then this picture was taken, right? So is this what
No,
you're
that's not
talking
the one
about?
I was talking. There's like an
Oh,
aerial one that kind of
oh,
shows like the circle driveway.
huh.
Maybe it wasn't Realtor.com or something, but
I
it looked pretty. It's like a sunny day, and it, you know, it looks
I
really
think
nice. I'm
it's
like,
the
wow.
one. I think it's the one from the journal. Hold on, I'm trying to get it back on the screen here. Um, and I have another. So I have an interesting um tidbit to share myself. Hold on, I was gonna put the journal there. So it's that one that overhead shot that the journal's using. Is that
That
what you're
one's all right,
talking
but
about?
no,
Okay.
there's one that I'll send you. You can post it
Okay.
later.
It's
I'll
all
find
right.
it, but
It's all right. Just
it kind of shows the circle drive. It looks
okay.
really charming.
Right, right. So a couple of
Actually, hold on.
things.
I think I used that for my ad for the
Okay.
foreclosure thing. Let me see if I can grab that.
I can try to give you permissions
Uh,
here to share. Um, I haven't figured out how to do that. Let's see here.
Let me see. Well, I mean, you might be able to see it. It's probably not on the judicial branch anymore.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I would, yeah. I have the picture actually in my folder. Let me see if I can share it.
All
Share.
right. And I'm just trying to figure out how to allow you to share your screen. And again, I
I
haven't.
have to send a request.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see it.
So, so let's see. Um, Boy, how do I do this? Share. I'm just going to share my screen too. Let me pull this up on there. All right. Can you see it?
Okay, I can. Yeah, that's a great, geez, that must have been from when they bought it, because didn't they buy it just like 3 or 4 years ago? Or maybe it
Yeah.
was from even the prior purchase or
It has an
something.
American flag and everything. You know,
But it was not like that. So
it
what
was not.
happened? So I find out about it. I email you. You were like, I'm being bombarded by calls. I was wishing you luck with all of that. Then there was a mystery about who the bodies were. What we learned is that it's the woman owner and their son, right? So a woman probably in her 60s, 50s or 60s, and the son who was early 20s. And there's a third person who they have yet to identify, but are we assuming it's the
It's
husband?
I'm assuming it's the husband because he was originally from England, and so they probably didn't have a DNA profile. God, for
Okay.
him,
Okay.
you got me nervous there.
And the
Just
only
there.
thing I can imagine what I know from my true crime podcast is that they DNA the mother and son and then do this other bodies and see if there's enough of a connection. They can assume
Yeah.
that it's, the father. But I think the mystery, so what I learned sort of in a very weird way is that I learned what the condition of the bodies were, that they'd been there quite a long time based on the decomposition. I learned the position they were in, where they were found, and like they were found in beds in sleeping bags. Is that something you know?
Yes.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if I was able to divulge that, but now that you know. Yeah, which to me suggests that maybe the heat went out or something like that, and they were burning something to stay warm. And I don't know what it might have been in the fireplace or it might have been something else, but I think it was carbon monoxide, which is
Yeah, that either that or a bad batch of drugs that they all happen to take. But it's
I tend
just
to take the more charitable point of
right.
view.
I don't mean
You know,
anything negative by that. I just mean,
yeah,
it's how do three people simultaneously, we assume simultaneously all,
yeah,
pass away like that. And yes, obviously carbon monoxide seems to be the thing because they did not find any evidence of any foul play of any kind. And
correct,
with the overgrown nature of the property, it wasn't just done in the spring because this auction was June 6th or something, right? This year.
yeah.
So it wasn't one season's worth of overgrown things. It had been not maintained for a while.
It
But
was a while. Now, the interesting thing was a couple strange unanswered questions on this one. Is when you do a foreclosure auction, you have to order a sign, unless it's a condo. But if it's a property like this, you have to order a sign, which in this particular case wasn't placed on the property. This property shares a driveway with two or three other properties, and so there's a group of mailboxes out, off of a cul-de-sac, and so that's where the sign was. But one of the things we're required to do is we have to go out and verify the placement of the sign. So, I drove out to Burlington a few weeks before the auction, made sure the sign was there, and I was there. So, what the hell? I'm going to go up to the house and just check it out, see if it looks like anyone's in there, introduce myself if they are. I always send a letter, but I got no response, obviously. But I looked at the property, thought, wow, no one's here. But when I got back on the day of the auction, there were two signs that were not there before. One of them said keep out. Another one had been knocked over, probably by the neighbors who were milling around when I got there. And that said owner occupied. So who put those signs up? Really weird. The other thing is that the neighbors had said that some of them swore that they saw some old guy emptying garbage or something out. So that to me raises the ghastly proposition that maybe there were squatters in the house who, they weren't going to disturb the bodies because they didn't want to be found. But my goodness, I
right.
mean, I,
What a price to pay for a roof over
I,
your head.
yeah, I mean, I guess, well, I mean, I'm not trying to judge anyone, but that's it's pretty horrible. So,
Yeah, you had told me that you had seen extra signs. Now, I would think that would be the focus of the police investigation of any police involvement would be that these extra signs went up after you had determined that the property was probably vacant and how odd that is given the condition of the bodies, right? Given how long those bodies had very likely
yeah,
been in place.
I did mention it to a state trooper, and she
Okay.
thought it was weird. But at the end of the day, unless they think that you know whoever put the signs up was responsible for the bodies, then I guess is it worth pursuing?
Well, the curiosity factor of why'd you put the signs up? How did you know? Did someone direct you to like all of that, right? I would just want to me, that's just the
Well,
way my lawyer brain works is I want to know
I
what's
did a
going
little
on
bit of
here.
research on the modern sophisticated squatter, and it's interesting because the sophisticated internet using squatter will search foreclosure auctions and then go scope out properties and see which ones appear to be abandoned because then that's somewhere to stay. And I imagine that if you know anything about these auctions, then you would know that you don't move out immediately after the auction. You
Right.
probably still have a little while, but you can still live there. And so I would assume that those signs were meant and they successfully kept me from ordering a locksmith.
Okay.
So, I mean, just for your listeners, never thought I'd say that, but for your listeners,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will say that we had talked about one of your clients had mentioned that it's really weird that you can buy a house without seeing the inside. But you know, by far, I've done these since 2014, so about 12 years. And, you get one or two a year. There's a hiatus during COVID, of course, but for the most part, it's been unusual to get interior access, either
Okay.
because the families are in there and they're certainly not feeling very hospitable, or you just can't get a hold of someone, and it's dubious as to whether or not someone is inside or not. If the property is clearly abandoned, then it's kind of a gray area, but reading the standing orders of the court, the Superior Court, we have the discretion to order a locksmith. Now, obviously, if we open the door and someone's staring at us, we can't go inside. But we have the authority to order the locksmith. And I fully intended to do it when I was driving there. But then I saw those signs and I thought, well, I mean, for all we know, there's some guy with a shotgun in the hallway waiting for us.
So
So can't do that.
it was the day, so let me back up to the day you went to determine the sign was posted out by the mailboxes.
Mhm.
You didn't happen to check the mailbox like that was assigned to that house in the bank of mailboxes.
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be too intrusive. I didn't
I
know.
totally would have, but you didn't happen to because your letter would have been in there probably. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you walked up to the house and you saw that it was totally overgrown, etc., and said, okay,
Yep.
there's probably nobody here. But it was the day of the auction that you went and you were going to you would order the locksmith for that day, but you didn't call in advance and say, meet me there. I
No,
guess that even if he
no,
had met you there, you would have seen the owner occupied and you would have told him to go away. Okay.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so because I was talking to somebody yesterday, which made me realize I should just get Chris on a video and interview him about his experience because they were like, it's the standing orders that you're supposed to get a locksmith and you're supposed to go inside, but you used your discretion, obviously, with those new signs up that
Well,
somebody would
there's
have
a
seen
there's
you.
a 2 hour inspection period
Okay, yeah,
before the auction, and so I got there around 9:30, and I probably would have ordered, called the locksmith. I have a guy, so he would have showed up within half an hour or so.
okay,
So, but again, I saw those signs. I thought, well, I guess that's that.
okay.
Can't do that.
And so an auction basically, and this is what I tell my clients too, who are living in their homes and are really nervous about it, and they happen to be around when their auction is happening. And I tell them that it's an attorney will pull up in a car. He or she will have a clipboard. You will take checks from interested bidders because you have to bring 10% of the fair market value. And here, I think the appraisal they were going off of was about $800,000.
Yeah,
So people were giving you $80,000 cashier's checks to bid. And
86, I think. Mhm.
okay, so maybe it was like 820 or 860, right? So it's 10% of that.
Yeah.
And then this is what I tell my clients. I go, it's just going to be this thing happening out by the sidewalk, out by the curb, where it's going to be like a conversation and you write down the names and then you give them a bid number and then you start the bidding. Now, you start the bidding because you're directed to start the bidding at a certain number, right?
Well, I think there was only one auction I had where the bank didn't start an opening bid.
Okay.
Well, scratch that. They did, but they didn't do it in time, and so they actually
Okay.
sent someone to do it.
Okay.
Some obviously fresh fresh out of law school, got the short straw to do that one. But
Right.
generally speaking, you'll get the bid from the bank probably the Wednesday, maybe the Thursday before the auction. And so you have a starting number. And in the good old days, it was not unusual at all before we had this housing crisis. It was not unusual for me to go there, sit in my car for 2 hours, and then leave because no one would show up. But or ever since COVID,
Hmm.
I've never had an auction where no one showed up.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so you start the bidding. Generally, I give people a choice. Sometimes the crowd wants to do it where you get bid, you register everyone to bid, and sometimes they want to do it where you just go down the line. Bidder number one, do you have a bid? Bidder number two, blah blah blah. That I think takes a bit too long. Usually, it's just I've got, I'm not like the Texas guy, but I'm like, I've got 300s. Anyone higher than that? And then someone will say that. gets a little annoying when there's a little bidding war going on between a couple parties and they're going up by like $50 or something like that.
I've seen
But
the bid sheets and I'm like,
yeah,
really? At that point, I would have been like, no, no, we're going by 500 or 1,000 at this
yeah.
point.
But I
I don't
thought
do,
about it. I don't think I have the authority to do it though. But I
oh,
want to be like, come on, guys. Yeah. So, but eventually it settles down and you reach a high bid. This particular one, I don't know, I think there were only like 8 bids or something like that because it started pretty close to the bank's bid, which was three something, I think.
okay.
And then Mr. Martian, the high bidder, I think just cut through the nonsense and came up with 525, and that pretty much shut everyone else down.
Okay. Because it had been appraised at 800 something just the fall before. And
Well, my appraisal. So when you do this, you get the court's appraisal, but one of the responsibilities of the committee is to order your own appraisal. And my guy came back at 650, I think. So
okay.
it was a little lower, but either way, at the very least, there was probably about $300,000 worth of equity.
Right. I mean, the middle point, even between your six and the eight, it's still not bad if you're in it for
Yeah,
525 and maybe all you need to do is a bunch of landscaping, right? Because
yeah.
maybe the interior is fine, it just got overgrown outside. But so, right, so that ends up being the thing. And then, a lot of people think, I mean, I've had situations where the bidder thinks they own the house that day. And I've had to get real strong armed with bidders who start parking their vehicles at the property, who start entering the property. And so that
Yep.
can be a problem. So, and I come from the perspective of the homeowner who's being foreclosed, and they're so nervous at what the auction means, and it really just means it's this transaction that happens out usually by the curb. Usually there aren't long cul-de-sac driveways like in this property. And that there's weeks before the bidder can take over the property, can access it. And even then, if you're still residing in it, you have the right to be evicted, right? They don't just get to knock on your door and say, we own it now.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I always make, well, I would think any committee would make this clear is after the bid, you have to sign a sales contract. And it's clear from that paperwork that the closing for the property, I mean, as of the auction, they've only given you 10% of
right.
whatever the fair market value was. And then there's the statutory redemption period, which is about 3 weeks, um, at which point, the homeowner can come up
Right.
with the money somehow and undo the sale, pay
So
everybody.
so what happens, I tell people, I go, if the auction's on a Saturday, the attorney who's conducting the auction, which in this case was you, comes back to their office on Monday or Tuesday and files a report with the court of what
Mhm.
happened, and you're filing a motion to approve the auction. And then that takes about 10 days for the court to be on a court's docket. And so, you have the auction, it's about like 2 Mondays, at least 2 Mondays later, 3 Mondays later, till your motion to approve the sale actually is heard. So do you happen to know if you knew whether the new bidder, the high bidder in this case, had accessed the property before your motion was heard? I can't remember the timing.
Yes, I did know that. I had filed a motion for advice from the court asking if the deadlines should be extended given the circumstances. And the court's response was no, proceed as usual, until
Yeah.
advised otherwise. And
My
so,
my source says that the police had released the property to whoever, right? That it was no longer a crime scene or no longer a scene of investigation within a few days of the discovery of the bodies. So I guess absent there's no court order or criminal investigation ongoing, the judge had the right to do that.
well,
But
the concern, I spoke with Attorney Lewis about it. Solid guy. And
mhm.
his concern, of course, was, well, now my client has an 86 or whatever $1,000 deposit sitting at the courthouse, and is he going to get it back? And I told him, John, I had a case where they had filed a motion to open right before the foreclosure auction. The court said, go ahead and have the auction, and we'll consider the motion later, which is weird. And
It
they
was
then
probably one of
granted
my
the
it was
motion.
probably one of my cases, Chris. It's probably one
Well,
where I
maybe,
was
maybe, yeah, who knows? I mean, so they're like, uh-oh, it's Sarah Forrest. We better, we better watch out. But yeah, that poor guy, that was only 20,000, only $20,000 or so. But eventually his attorney had to file a motion to intervene in order to get the money back from the court. And so that's what Attorney Lewis did here, which I think was the
okay,
right move, which was
right.
granted. But at the end of the day, the thing that we need to know is when did those when did those people die?
Right.
Because the relevant time period is the Liz pendants. So, before the case is, or maybe right after the case is filed, usually before, the bank will file a Liz pendants saying, "Hey, everybody, just on the land records, so this property is going to get, there's going to be a lawsuit involving this property."
Right.
So, the rules in Connecticut are, if there's a subsequent party after the lis pendens is filed, they're still given constructive notice of the case. So there's no need to substitute a defendant at that point. If, however, and I think this is the case, the body is predeceased the notice of lis pendens, then the judgment itself is defective because the parties should have been substituted, their estates should have been substituted for the parties, and they weren't. So if that's the case, then judgment's no good, auction's no good, and what have you. So,
And that's kind of, so here's some timing here. So this thing is this up here, this date's called the return date. Um, which is sort of an operative date in some regard, but it looks like the docket number was obtained August 1st, 2025. So if these bodies, so really what this means, and this you're answering a question that, so I did a video the other day about the headline on the Wall Street Journal about this, and then I sent a link to that video to my entire email list. And somebody responded saying, "Doesn't this raise probate issues, right? When did these people pass away? And don't they have to go through probate at this point?" So the timing is exactly right. I mean, I'd like to think that they were still alive last summer, but I'm not the forensic pathologist here to determine how old they are, how long ago. But basically what you're saying is in August of 2025 is around when the lis pendens, which is the document filed on the land records to tell the world that there's a foreclosure action that's imminent, um, was filed. And so if the person was alive when the suit commenced, then you don't have to substitute in the estate if they pass away subsequent to the
correct,
filing of the suit. But if they were already deceased when these papers were filed and served, then you have to yeah, then you have to substitute in the estate of and the Paul Cash, the estate of Sally Cash, etc.
correct.
Right. So
So
I
until we know that,
I responded to the person who said something. I said, "That's very astute, and that's what's going on right now is there's motions filed uh, citing that, right? The motion to intervene cites that maybe this has to start over again."
yeah, I mean, my initial thought when I started dealing with this was, this is crazy. There's so much equity in this property. I was fully expecting to have a bankruptcy filed, which I
Okay.
do all the time.
Right.
I file a bankruptcy on the eve of a foreclosure, and I
I
send
sent you
out
someone this morning.
who I talked to right before. Thank you for
Okay.
that. It was Mohammed, correct?
Don't say names.
Well, I didn't say his last. I mean,
It's
there's more than
okay.
one.
Right.
There's
So,
more than one. So, um, but yeah, I thought surely there's going to be a bankruptcy. I kept checking my email the night before,
yep.
and I do it all the time. And I send an email to the committee, and I advise them that I filed a bankruptcy, and that I've told my client not to pelt them with rotten vegetables or anything like that, but that they are expected to be out there. Didn't get anything like that, so I thought it was
Mhm.
crazy. I actually did speak to the nephew of the wife, Sally Ann, who hadn't spoken with her for 10 years or so, but he had indicated that they were pretty private people, but they were pretty well off and they had a good job and whatever. So I have to think that maybe whatever, for whatever reason, that's why they stopped paying the mortgage, was because of their deaths. And if that's the case, I
Okay.
mean, I think this case was filed many months after the last payment. I think the last payment was probably sometime in the winter, which
Right. Because
fuels my,
you stop paying, and then there's like about 4 months minimum, usually 6 months before foreclosure is initiated. So that would mean
well,
it's
unless they hire
possible.
Sarah Porras, in which case it's years. But
No, no, no. I'm not talking about the length of your case once filed, but you stop paying your mortgage and then the initiation of the suit is usually about 6 months later at a
yeah,
minimum. And so that would put this around February 2005, which is a lot longer than I have even thought. I'm thinking last fall sometime, or when it first got cold this winter in December or November or something, that if the CO2 or the carbon monoxide issue started. So wow, I hadn't even thought that it could be that long. So right, you're right that they would have paid otherwise. But have any family come forward? I mean, this is other than the nephew, like this is crazy.
Well, I don't think they really had much family. According to the nephew, he and his sister are probably the only
Huh.
family. The husband, I think, only had parents in England, and they were,
Okay.
very elderly. With the last time this nephew saw them 10 or 15 years
Okay.
ago, they had a son, but he was one of the bodies.
With them,
So,
yeah.
and I told the nephew, he asked me, well, should I just let the foreclosure auction go forward? Is there a way to do that? I said, well, first of all, think that's, I don't think there really is. If there's a deficiency, then you can't. But furthermore, why would you? There's so much equity in that property.
Right. Right.
So, and
Except how are you going to market this house now? I think it's kind of a notorious property, but
I don't know, Sarah. I got some weird calls from people who seem to think that I had some way to transfer it. I had a guy call me up,
huh.
and he claimed to be the husband. Well, I guess I won't say her name, but of a famous race car driver,
Okay.
and, which immediately my spidey sense went off when he identified that fact, like within the second sentence of talking to me. I was like, okay, man. He's like, well, we're looking for a house, and can we get this one? I was like, that's not how it works. I was like, maybe I can put you in touch with the high bidder if they end up, still getting the
Right.
house. Maybe
Right.
they'll, in exchange for some tickets to NASCAR, maybe they'll come and let you do it. But weird calls like that, because again, people have an imperfect understanding of my
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
How it
Well,
goes.
I just kind of want to go back to maybe how long they'd been there, and we don't know yet, and maybe there will be a public report, released publicly to satisfy our curiosity, if nothing else. But if they were well off and found in sleeping bags in a house and they passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning, if they were well off, why were they? It's like they knew they didn't have heat, or they knew that there was something wrong with the heat. Why would they not just not pay to fix the heat or stay somewhere else? And so that again, just a swirl of weird facts.
I have this horrible imagining of them all hunkering down together saying, "Isn't this fun?" Camping out inside. And, and I don't think they froze to death. I mean, if you're in a sleeping bag, you might be uncomfortable, but you're not going to freeze to
And you're
death.
not all going to freeze to death like the same
Yeah.
time. Right. Totally. Right.
But if there's carbon monoxide, or as you said, maybe it was some sort of drug related thing, but, you know, either or that's got to be it.
Yeah. Well, I will have you back on if necessary, if we learn more or if the case gets really complicated. But I just wanted to sort of hash this out with someone so interesting, and thank you for your time today and being you're the constant here, right? You're the neutral party, just to be clear. You're the neutral party. You were just assigned by the judge to do the sale. It could have been anybody and it happened
Yes.
to be you.
I
Okay.
was very clear to all the reporters that I do not represent the bank. I only represent the court.
No, you are neutral, and I only know you to either do this neutral work or to represent consumers in foreclosures or bankruptcies, and that's why we're so well aligned. But again, thanks, Chris Thogmartin, for giving us some more information here in detail, and I really appreciate your time, and we'll stay tuned. I'll call you again if I have any other questions.
You are most welcome. It's
All
always a
right,
pleasure.
thank you.
All right.
I'm gonna stop the recording somehow.